first, let me share a little bit about the Coalition for College and the work that we do. We're more than 170 colleges and universities with a proven commitment to access, affordability, and student success. So we believe that coalition colleges are smart college choices because of the commitment that they all share. Coalition schools are dedicated to graduating students on time with low or no debt. And this includes students who have been historically excluded and underrepresented in higher education. So members of the coalition provide a variety of smart college choices for students to explore and apply to with a wide range of student body sizes and levels of selectivity as well. Still put all the coalition schools together, they outperform average by about 17% when it comes to retention rates as well as graduation rates, which are both really important factors to consider when you're thinking about which college you want to attend and the time and money that you want to invest in your education. So when you're thinking about your college list, a really great place to start is with the over 170 college schools dedicated to making education accessible and affordable. So if you we launched a new application process with our partner SCORE. So rather than creating a My Coalition account, you actually create an SCORE to power your college search and application process. So you'll be able to actually search and discover schools there, collaborate with reporters, your counselors, CBO advisors, and then apply and track your application status through that. So we still provide an easy to use fee waiver. So as you're going through and filling out your profile, if any of those apply, then you can bypass the application fee payment process. And we will drop a link in the chat so you can learn more about that. But this is available to all or only to coalition member schools so that you know that you're applying to schools that are dedicated to helping you graduate on time with low or no debt. So the coalition and its members actually work to help students learn about before and apply to college. And so feel free to follow us on Instagram to bring some of that insight to your feed. And if you have any questions following this webinar, feel free to reach out to us via email at info@coalitionforcollege.org. So with that, we have some wonderful coalition schools here joining us today: Marquette, Olin, and WashU. So before we get into the portion, I'm going to ask each one of the presenters to introduce themselves and then just share their favorite thing about their institution. And we'll start with Dari.
All righty, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dari Pedenas, and I am an admissions counselor up at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And one of my favorite things about Marquette is the sense of community that we have on campus. Midwest Nice is real, and we are very, very welcoming to all. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Susan Tierink. I'm the Associate Vice Provost for Enrollment and Financial Aid. And I have been at Marquette University, so I can attest to Dari's claim to a wonderful community of welcoming folks. And it's, for me as well, one of my favorite things is the close-knit community that we have at Marquette.
Hi, I'm Nina Flood. I'm a financial aid counselor at Olin College of Engineering. And we are the smallest school, I believe, in the entire coalition. And I think my favorite thing about it is that I feel like I know more people in every part of the school than I've ever known in any of my other jobs, including students. So.
Good evening. My name is Ariel Brown. I'm a Senior Assistant Director of Student Financial Services at Washington University. What I love about WashU is how hard we work in order to make WashU a valid option for any student that would like to attend. And I just love that we do our best to try to make it affordable for every family and for every student that wants to attend Washington University. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name is Jenny Jean-Jacques, and I'm an admissions officer at WashU as well. So my favorite thing about the institution, just kind of echoing what Ariel said, but the hardworking and intellectually passionate and kind nature of our students, staff, and faculty. It's just really nice to be able to come into work and just be around so many amazing people.
Awesome. So with that, we're going to go ahead and kick off some of the Q&A here. So many of you all submitted questions during registration. So we'll start with a couple of those, but as I mentioned, the Q&A function is enabled. So please feel free to ask any of your questions through there and someone will either respond to it via text or we will respond it live on the webinar. Just so you all know, my connection is not the greatest. I'm going to go ahead and stop my video to make sure that the audio is working well. So the first question that I have, I'm actually going to direct to Nina. So Nina, who is eligible to fill out the FAFSA?
Well, any student who has graduated or has completed the high school course or is going to be completing that and has financial need, who is a U.S. citizen or non-citizen and is planning on enrolling in a eligible degree or certificate program.
Awesome. So just a quick question, because I know this came up a couple of times. So if I were an international student, would I be eligible to fill out the FAFSA?
There are certain types of international students who are classified as eligible non-citizens, but you need to be a U.S. national or permanent resident or refugee or be seeking asylum. So it is not your traditional international student would not be eligible to complete the FAFSA.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nina. The next question that I have here, I'm going to ask to Ariel. Ariel, what document should students and families have prepared or ready in order to complete their FAFSA?
Yes, students that need to complete the FAFSA want to make sure that they have their own and their parents' federal income tax return. The custodial parent is the parent that's filling out the FAFSA form, and that is the parent that would need to make sure that their taxes are available. The parent and student W-2s from the year in question. So for the 23-24 academic year, you will want to have your 2021 federal 1040 tax return and also your 2021 W-2. And you would also want to make sure that you have any other records of money that you've earned available so that that information can be included as well on the application. If you have bank statements, those may be necessary or helpful, current bank statements, and a record of your current investment totals. And also any records of untaxed income that you have, you want to make sure that you have that available as well.
Just a couple of follow-up questions, Ariel, that are coming into the Q&A. So does the parent fill out the FAFSA? Does the student fill out the FAFSA, or do both fill it out?
Both fill it out. So it is the student's FAFSA application. Why that's important is because if you have more than one student attending college at the same time, you want each student to have their own FAFSA application that they have completed in relationship to that parent entering their information on both student applications.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ariel.
And if I could add that it's also good to have your driver's license nearby, because I know that I have two boys who are filling out financial aid forms, and they do request their driver's license number.
Nina, that makes me think of Social Security cards. So that would be another good one. A lot of first-year college students don't know their social. So if you do not, that might be helpful as well. You may be able to get it off of the tax return as well.
Awesome. So one other question that kind of goes up to follow up to that about tax returns is, do both parents need to submit their income in the FAFSA application?
If the parents are married or not married but living together, both parents' income is going to go on the FAFSA form.
Awesome. Thank you so much for clearing that up, Bill. The next question I have is going to actually go to Dari. So Dari, what is an FSA ID? Who needs one, and how do you go about getting it?
Yeah, so the FSA ID is essentially going to be your electronic signature to sign the FAFSA. You will need it to make sure you can submit it. Both the parent filling out the FAFSA and the student applying for the FAFSA will need to have one. But if the parent has created one in the past for an older sibling, then you don't need to remake it. You already have one with standing and existing. Along with that, for the student making it and the parent making it, you will need your socials to make sure you can create it. But beyond that, the FSA ID is a lot shorter than the FAFSA, and it's typically recommended you make it beforehand because when you come to the end, that's the very, very last step. So the importance of it is that you need it to hit submit and do that final step of the FAFSA.
Awesome. And then Susan, there is a question here. Should I or should I not directly link my FAFSA to the IRS website? What does that do, and are there advantages or disadvantages?
Thanks for the question, Derek. We encourage everyone to use the IRS data retrieval tool. That's where you do the automatic link through the IRS. It prevents errors when you use the direct link because the questions that are being asked, the answers come directly from the IRS and they fill in the spaces on your FAFSA that require that information. So there's no guessing on the part of the family. In addition, if your file is selected for what is called verification, which is the federal government's quality control measure, the Department of Education's quality control measure, if you use the IRS data retrieval tool, then you have half of the verification process already completed because your information is coming directly from the IRS. So there's a couple of benefits of doing it. Again, you answer the questions are answered appropriately by doing that data transfer, and you have gone halfway through the verification process already. So yes, it's a real benefit to doing it.
Awesome. Are there any disadvantages to doing it? That was one of the questions that just got posted as well.
I don't see any disadvantages to doing it. One of the things that happens when you do the transfer of the IRS data, when it comes across into your FAFSA, the data is actually masked to prevent any kind of data insecurity. And so that is something that perhaps might make some families uncomfortable, that they can't actually see what's being transferred. But in my opinion, as an aid administrator, and I'm guessing my colleagues on this panel probably feel the same way, we prefer it when families do the direct IRS data retrieval tool.
Absolutely. The only time that if you can do it, we would recommend that you do it. And the only time that I'm aware of when you cannot do it is if you are filing as head of household. So that would be, or married filing separately. But if you are eligible, it is certainly in your best interest to use the data retrieval tool.
Awesome. And then a quick question for you, Nina, since you had mentioned the driver's license. If a student doesn't have a driver's license, can they use a different permit ID?
No, that's fine. If they don't have a license, then they just put down that they don't have a license, because the FAFSA will have already had the FSA ID with the social security number. So there doesn't need to be another form of education or form of identification.
Okay, awesome.
Just, if they have it, they need to put the license number.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Nina. Another question here that we have is about a deadline. So Ariel, when should students start filling out FAFSA, and does it have a deadline? And then are there any advantages to filling it out early?
Yes, so thank you. You do want to complete your FAFSA as early as October 1st. So the FAFSA is already available to get to complete for the fall of 2023. You want to do it as soon as possible, but it can be completed through the entire school year until June 30th of 2024. There are some disadvantages to waiting that long. Some state funding have deadlines prior to the expiration of the application. So you want to make sure that the state in which you're applying, that you are meeting any deadlines that are required for state funding that may be available to you. So making sure, really, we just tell everyone it's close to October 1st that you can complete the FAFSA, go ahead and get it done. You can always log in and make updates later if necessary, but getting it submitted as close to that starting date is best for you.
Okay, and then one question I'm going to throw back to you, Dari, since you were mentioning about the FSA ID. Someone asked, does each parent need their own separate FSA ID? Or can two married parents living in one household use one?
Yeah, so just one parent needs it. You don't need both, regardless of marital status, just one parent.
Awesome. Another question that came through, which hopefully one of you all will be able to drop it into the chat. I know that there are some websites that are like FAFSA.com and all of these things. Can one of you all post the official FAFSA website so that nobody gets scammed into any of the you all know it is free to file the FAFSA. So do not go to a website that forces you to do that, because it's the free application. So the next question I'm going to ask is actually to Jenny. Jenny, can you give a general overview of the steps that go into filling out the FAFSA and applying for financial aid?
Absolutely. So I just popped in the official website into the chat, but the first thing that families just want to do is determine what type of schools that they want to apply to, because each school might actually have a slightly different process with applying for financial aid. So if you're dependent on any federal aid, you'll want to apply for the FAFSA. However, some private schools, they're going to have something additional that you will do, which is called the CSS profile. And that stands for College Scholarship Service Profile. So that just gives you additional funds that are non-government aid that are just through their university. But again, both of those applications will open up on October 1st.
Awesome. Just a plug, we also have a CSS profile session that we will be holding next month as well. So if you are applying to AILs that use that, you can also get some information from there. Thank you so much for that, Jenny. The next question that I have is going to be for Nina. And I see this coming into the Q&A a couple times as well. Do I add every school I'm applying to on my list of schools to receive my FAFSA? And what do I do if I have more than 10?
Yes, you definitely want to take a look at the school's deadlines, that the schools to which your student is applying, and the ones that have the earliest deadlines, put those on the FAFSA first. They can put up to 10 for the first time. And then once the FAFSA is processed, your student will get a student aid report. And you can take out as many schools as you wish, because they'll already have the data, and add any additional schools. So you can add schools 10 at a time.
Awesome. And I just want to go back to this, Jenny, because I've seen this question a couple of times in the Q&A. So if you can just restate this. So does the FAFSA have to be completed after submitting college applications, or could they do it before submitting their applications?
Yeah, so as soon as that application opens up on October 1st, they're able to apply for financial aid, regardless of if they've started their applications for the college or not. I do just want to say, though, you won't actually get a financial aid package, though, until you filled out the application for each individual school and you've received a decision of admit.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. Another question that I'm going to actually throw out to Susan. Is there any benefit in filling out the FAFSA if you're not applying for need-based aid?
It really depends. If you're not applying for need-based aid, the FAFSA, that's what the FAFSA is doing, is calculating your eligibility for need-based aid. But there are some schools that use the FAFSA form to determine the amount of institutional aid that they are giving a particular student. So it may be beneficial either to contact the schools where your child is applying and ask that question of them specifically, or I always encourage families, at least in the freshman year, to file the FAFSA form just to see. It takes about 30 minutes to file a FAFSA form. So you really aren't out a lot of time, and there's no harm in completing the form. So I always encourage people, at least in their first year, to complete the form.
Thank you, Susan. The next I have is for Ariel. Can you explain what the SAR is? And then also, what does the EFC mean? So I know we have a lot of EFC, SAR, all those things. So if you could just explain what those mean.
Right. Yes. Thank you. So the SAR is your student aid report. The SAR, affectionately called, is a document from the federal student, gives you some basic information about your eligibility for federal student aid, and it lists the answers that you input on your FAFSA application. something important to note is that it is not your financial aid offer. It is only listing that information and including, it's just proof of the FAFSA application that you completed, or just that information listed out in a document. Your expected family contribution is the EFC. So the EFC is your expected family contribution. This number is included on your FAFSA on your SAR, in the top right-hand corner. When you're looking at your SAR student aid report, you're able to see the EFC, expected family contribution, in the top right-hand corner. And this is a number that colleges use to calculate how much financial aid your family is eligible to receive. The EFC is not the amount of money your family has to pay for college or the amount of federal student aid you will receive. It is just a dollar amount that's used for that calculation, and it's used by each school individually.
Thank you, Ariel. That was really great. And yeah, as I said, I know there are a lot of different acronyms for everything, so thank you for helping to clear that up. The next question that I have is going to be for Dari. So can students log back into the FAFSA and submit to more schools? I think Nina kind of touched on that, but can you just make sure that we get that message across?
Yeah, totally. So yes, you are able to apply to more than 10 schools on the FAFSA. After the first round of submitting your first 10 schools, you'll be getting an email with their SAR and then also an email stating that your FAFSA has been processed. Once you get that confirmation email, that is the green light and go ahead that you can log back onto the FAFSA with your FSA ID that you just created. And then also you can make edits and changes or corrections and then delete the schools and then add the new schools. So very doable. Just make sure that you get that confirmation email that your FAFSA has been processed before doing so, because if you don't get this email and you do it before that, there's a chance the first 10 schools did not receive the FAFSA just yet.
Awesome. Thank you, Dari. Jenny, why do students and parents fill out the FAFSA every year? And does it matter if there are multiple kids or siblings in college?
Yeah, so the reason why students and their parents need to fill it out every year is because your financial circumstances can change from year to year. So you may qualify for more or less, just dependent on your tax return and the year that you had. And then the more siblings or children that are in college at the same time would actually reduce your family's EFC each year. And so you could potentially qualify for more aid from colleges and universities because there's more stress on your family's finances.
Thank you, Jen. And another question that just came in, I'll ask this to Nina. How long usually take to get the SAR, that student aid report, once you submit it? And do both the student and the parent get separate emails about it?
That's a great question. The parents do not get the student aid report. The student aid report is going to the student at the email that the student puts on the FAFSA. And it takes, if it's filed electronically and signed electronically, the student aid report can be processed within 3 to 5 days, sometimes faster.
Thank you, Nina. This question I'm actually going to ask to Susan. It's one that came in the Q&A. How are student assets or bank accounts considered when doing the FAFSA and for financial aid eligibility?
So assets of the students are assessed at a straight 20%. So the example I use when giving a financial aid night is if your student has $1,000 in a bank account, then $200 is assumed to be available to help with education. Now, that doesn't mean the student has to write a check for $200. It just means that that $200 will be considered as part of the EFC.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. And it looks like in the Q&A, it looks like a lot of folks are having some trouble with the FAFSA website, that it's down or that they're unable to save. Ariel, do you have any advice for what they should do? And I know someone even asked, is there a helpline?
There is a FAFSA helpline. It's 1-800-4-FED, FED. AID, AID, so you can reach out to them. I also recommend if the website is down, give it a day and try the next day. It can be very frustrating when the FAFSA is not working like it should, but don't lose heart. You're not crazy. Sometimes it really does loop and do weird things. So my recommendation would be to give it a day and come back to it again in a day or two. Just giving the system an opportunity to reboot or them an opportunity to work on it. Sometimes it can be frustrating as well when you call in and you're on hold a long time. I've really been hearing about a lot of extended hold times this current academic year, just since October 1st. So more than likely other people are calling as well, saying something similar. So just waiting and trying to log in again is usually the best way to try to get it done.
And then
Along with that, really fast, if you're working on the FAFSA, there could be a high likelihood that this will pop up while you're working on it. So I always suggest families and students to hit the save button on the top right corner, closer to the center, so you do not lose any information that you have inputted, just in case this were to pop up while you're working on it.
Awesome. And actually that goes back to a question that's popped up again. So when should they finish the FAFSA? Is there an actual deadline? So even if something were to happen today, they worry, are they going to miss a deadline anytime soon? Jenny?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here. So essentially with the FAFSA, again, it opens up on October 1st, 1st. It opens up on October 1st. And then it is open for the entire academic cycle. So you can apply for the FAFSA at any point in that academic year, but bear in mind that the federal government can run out of aid if you do not apply early enough, right? So sometimes you may have been eligible for something like a Pell Grant, for example, and they've already exhausted all of their aid by like February. And unfortunately, you're not able to get that because you applied too late. So definitely apply early if you can. However, know that it will be open for you to apply later on, but it's just, you're going to get the best scenario possible with your financial aid package if you apply as early as possible.
Awesome. Thank you again for that, Jenny. And then there is a question here about what section are the 529s included in the FAFSA application? I'm going to ask that to Nina, if you could answer that question for us.
Sure. And the 529s should be treated as a parent asset and reported as such. And keeping in mind that even though it is for the benefit of the student, that while Susan was saying from Marquette that student assets are assessed at 20%, a parent's maximum amount of assets that will sink into the expected family contribution is closer to 6%. So it is actually to the benefit of the family if they correctly report the 529s as parental assets.
Thank you, Nina. One other question that it seems to be coming up here is about if something changes with their income kind of drastically or a dramatic change, should they go about, how should they go about reporting that to an institution? And I'm going to ask Susan if you can answer that. So if their current income situation changes, how can they reflect that or let institutions know?
Sure. When you have a change in circumstances, so as you all are aware, fall of 23, you're using your 2021 taxes. And a lot of things change in many people's lives between 2021 tax filing and the fall of 23 when your student is starting school. So if you had a change in circumstances, you are encouraged to contact the schools where your child is applying and let them know how your situation has changed. This is called either a professional judgment or special circumstances. Both names are interchangeable. You contact the schools. They will assess what your situation is and indicate to you what additional information they might need. And then when you submit that additional information, the school has then the authority to take that additional information and reassess the information on your FAFSA to reflect your most current situation. So if there's been a job loss and you've seen a significant loss in income from 2021, the school can take that additional information and then assess your student's FAFSA based on, or reassess your student's FAFSA based on that new and updated information.
Thank you, Susan. A couple of other questions that are coming in. Some of them are still about being able to edit your FAFSA. Can you, Ariel, kind of tell us a little bit about, once they submit their FAFSA, can they go in and edit it? And then once again, touch on being able to submit it to multiple institutions, because that question seems to keep coming up.
Yeah, thank you. So you are able to edit your FAFSA application. The way that you edit your FAFSA application is you log back into your FAFSA and indicate that you would like to make a correction. You'll use your information to log in to make that correction, specifically related to the number of colleges that can be listed on the FAFSA. The FAFSA application only lets you input 10 colleges at a time. So what you would do if you had 15 colleges is that you would submit your FAFSA with the first 10. Then once that application is processed, that's considered transaction 1 of the FAFSA that has those first 10 colleges on it. After that transaction 1 has been processed, you would log back in, indicate that you'd like to make a correction to the FAFSA, go to the add a school page of the FAFSA. You would remove at least 5 of those and update it with the 5 new schools that you would like to add, and you would submit your FAFSA application again. That is going to create transaction 2 of the FAFSA. 0202 is how it would be seen by the school. But basically, the first 10 colleges would receive the 01 transaction of the FAFSA, as long as you didn't make any adjustments to any of the financial data or any of the other information. They would receive the 01 transaction, with the only difference being that those 5 additional schools that you add, they would only have access to the 02 transaction, which is the transaction that includes their school. Sorry for the extra answer, but it is a little confusing how that works.
Thank you, Ariel. I think that was super helpful. For Dari, should about the FAFSA, even if they did the school's price calculator and it tells them that they don't qualify for need-based aid?
Yes, the recommendation is always to fill out the FAFSA, because think about the FAFSA as opening all opportunities and all doors to any kind of financial aid that you are eligible for. So even if the net price calculator, which is a mere estimate of how much it's going to cost you to attend that institution, states you're not eligible for need-based aid at that institution, you may qualify at another school. Along with that, you are getting reviewed for maybe merit-based aid. You may be reviewed for work study or loans. So it's opening every door, just because it is the FAFSA. So it's going through the federal government, the state government, and the individual institutions.
One thing that I would add to that, Derek, is that some schools like WashU, we require an additional financial aid application. So you just want to be very specific with the school that you're applying to make sure that you're aware if they require more than just the FAFSA application to apply for need-based financial aid.
Awesome. Quick question to you. Which of the schools on the panel tonight take the CSS profile as well? If you want to do a raise of hands, do any of you all take the CSS profile? Okay, so WashU does also require the CSS profile. So then I'll ask this question to Eric and to Jenny. If a student doing early action or early decision and the deadline is 1, do they have to also have the CSS profile completed by the time of the early action deadline?
Yeah, so the first thing I just want to define is what is early action versus what is early decision. So early decision is a binding process where the student, their family, and their school counselor are all signing this legal agreement saying that if they were admitted to that university, they would be going, right? So early action is non-binding. Some universities just want to be able to give you your decision early, So you can apply to them, you can apply to as many schools as you want, and you can see how you fared in the admissions process with them. And then you're able to withdraw your application if you decide it's no longer a good fit. So the thing with early action and early decision is typically their deadlines are much earlier. So for early decision specifically, you would have to submit your FAFSA and your CSS profile typically a few weeks after the posted deadline. Now, keep in mind, you would be doing that legal agreement and still saying that you would withdraw all applications from other schools if you were admitted without knowing your financial aid. So after you're admitted, again, then you would receive your financial aid, but you do just have to know for each university whether or not they have a binding agreement. And then you also have to just have a good idea of if that institution would be affordable for you. And you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can have a conversation with their financial aid office. You can do something that's called a net price calculator, where you can just plug in your numbers and get a general sense of what your family might get as far as aid. But that's just the biggest thing to know, is whether or not you're going into a binding agreement. Then also typically the schools will post the deadlines that you must submit a FAFSA CSS profile if you're going the early decision route. If you're going early action, you might have an additional some additional time to actually fill out that FAFSA or CSS profile. Hopefully that answers your question. I'm happy to elaborate a little bit more if that was confusing for anyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. Susan, I have a question for you. So what if a student is a U.S. citizen, but their parents are not and do not live and work in the U.S.? Do they still fill out the FAFSA, and how should they go about this?
Sure. Parents can assist their students by filling out the FAFSA form. If they don't have a Social Security number, they just enter all zeros. And it gets a little tricky because when a parent enters zeros, then they have to hit enter 2 times to make it what I call stick, because they are questioning whether the all zeros is correct. So you enter the all zeros, you hit enter, it's almost like they're saying, are you sure? And then you enter zeros again, and you hit enter. And that is how that's how they enter the Social Security number. Then in terms of their income and tax information, they take whatever their country of where they're making their earnings. So if that's an international country, they determine what the value, the equivalent is in US dollars, and enter that into the FAFSA form. So if you're living in England and you're earning things in pounds, you find out what the pound is against the dollar, and you enter your income and your tax information in US dollars as opposed to pounds. But then again, the Social Security number, because you don't have a Social Security number, is entered as zeros.
Thank you, Susan. There is another question here about a student who is a U.S. national but living abroad, and the FAFSA website doesn't open up in this other country. Do you have any advice for them on how to fill out their FAFSA? And I'll throw that out to any of you.
They can always print out a PDF and sign it with a wet signature and send it in a mail.
Okay.
Yeah, that hasn't been my experience with other people. I've had students whose parents are living in India who have been able to fill out the form from a foreign country. So I don't know what the circumstance is in that particular case. So I would do either as Nina suggests or keep trying.
Awesome. Yeah. So it sounds like there have been some issues with the FAFSA website. So that might just be a minor glitch. And you do have time to go back and try that out. So it looks like there are a lot of questions in the Q&A around 529s. Do you all mind explaining what a 529 is? And also, I guess there's some questions around if the 529s created by people who are not the parents or custodial parents or guardians. And I'll turn that to Nina.
Okay, a 529 is basically a way that a parent or any individual can create savings that will grow without the growth being taxed. So much like any kind of IRA or 401k is for retirement, and that money can grow and not have the tax on the value being gained or any interest or dividends that are paid. A 529 enables a parent to do that for their children's education. So unlike a retirement account, 529 will be using taxed money. So it's not like a tax break to say for a 529, but the benefit being that it will grow without having the earnings taxed until the student needs it for their education. And as far as if an aunt has a 529 or if a grandparent has a 529, and this is a situation that that I personally have experienced, is that currently the direction was to have a grandparent's 529 contribution be treated as untaxed income for the student. However, that is changing with the 24-25 FAFSA, and it won't be counted.
Awesome, thank you. Those are very specific questions, but hopefully those help the folks who are asking that. The next question that I have is actually, I'll ask Jenny. So does the FAFSA application affect the applicant's college acceptance results?
This is a great question. So it actually depends on the college or university that you're applying to. It depends on if they are need aware or need blind when making decisions. So WashU, for example, is need blind, meaning that a family's ability to pay for the institution has no bearing in the admissions process. But some universities for some specific populations may use this to make their decisions.
Thank you so much. And you had mentioned early decision as well as early action. So one question that came in is, if after you receive your financial aid offer from an early decision school, after you've been accepted and you demonstrate that you cannot afford the cost, is the decision still binding?
Yeah, I had a lot of people ask this question. I'm glad to clarify this a little bit more. So the first thing is, I really just want to encourage you, if you're worried at all about this happening, is to have a proactive conversation with the financial aid office of the college or university that you want to apply to. That way you can try to nip this in the bud prior to you getting into any sort of sticky situation. But again, they have lots of calculators, they have lots of tools to be able to give you a good ballpark of where you would land. So if you do all of that and you still sign the early decision agreement, and maybe your financial aid package for some reason looks wildly different than you were expecting, or something happens in the midst of you receiving that decision, have a conversation again with your financial aid office. Also, at that point, you would also need to bring in university leadership. And then depending on the college or university, they may or may not release you from that binding agreement. That's why it's just really important to educate yourself on the legal nature of the binding agreement and to just try to be proactive and not getting yourself into that situation in the first place.
Okay, and then these are a couple of questions regarding divorced parents that have come in. So one of the is around 50-50 custody. Which parent should enter financial aid information? Is it the one who makes more, the one who makes less? And I will throw that over to Ariel.
Currently, I'm saying currently because the FAFSA simplification process for 24-25 there are rumors that there are going to be some changes to that, but currently for the 23-24 academic year, it should be the parent that the student lives with more than 50% of the time, or the parent that provides more than 50% of the financial support.
Okay.
Stay tuned for 24-25.
Awesome. So it looks like there was a question as well that that somebody heard that there were going to be changes to the FAFSA, which you just alluded to. Can you go over them a bit, Nina, or any of the changes that we might know of so far?
Sure. There's changes going on in 23, 24, as well as changes that they've let us know about that are forecasted for 24, 25. And the one that Ariel was just alluding to was that in 24, 25, the parent that claims the child as a deduction is going to be the person who needs to complete the FAFSA. So that's one change that's coming in, but not this year, but next academic year, next academic year. For 23, 24, there are a couple of changes that are interesting. The students that identify as male are no longer required to register with the Selective Service. Additionally, drug-related convictions will not prohibit someone from having financial aid. They also do not have to list whether or not they're male or female. But again, in 24, 25, another change is the expected family contribution is going to be changing names to be more indicative of what it is, which is an indicator. It's going to be called the student aid indicator, or index rather, so that it will carry less of an emotional effect when people hear expected family contribution. That can be very disquieting because nobody feels like they can ever write a check for that amount. But additionally, the SAI will also have the capacity to enable schools to award more aid because it can be a negative number, up to, I believe, negative 1,500. And again, in 24, 25, that will also drastically reduce the number of questions, where it's now as many as 180. It will go down to about 38. But for this coming year, it will also, there's just all sorts of changes. Anybody else who would like to jump in?
Right. But also, like they said, we will stay you keep an eye on the website. Things will come out soon. Another question that came in that I would love to have Susan answer is if a parent has a student that is going to take a gap year, should they fill out the FAFSA this year?
No, I actually had a daughter who took a gap year, so I'm very familiar with this scenario. You fill out the FAFSA prior to your students starting school. So if they aren't starting till fall of 24, then you would use your 22 taxes and fill out the 24, 25 FAFSA for that student.
All right, thank you, Susan. What I'm noticing about some of the questions are that people are kind of seeing the FAFSA and the student aid report, that EFC that gets spit out as the end all be all. Can you tell us a little bit more, since you use prior year taxes, Ariel, to get that EFC or the federal government does? What happens after that? Is that EFC set in stone, or is there anything else that happens in financial aid packaging?
Yeah, so the expected family contribution is used for the calculation. However, it does not necessarily mean that the expected family contribution is the dollar that will be the dollar amount that your family is required to pay out of pocket. It's very school specific. So don't be frightened by that number. Make sure that you are talking with your school. A school like Washington University that meets 100% of demonstrated need, that expected family contribution from the FAFSA is used in relationship to your CSS profile calculation that's completed, or it's similar, but it's the institutional methodology that creates a number similar to the expected family contribution, but those come together to determine your family's out-of-pocket costs. And so depending on the school, they're using that number for their calculation of how they're going to build your financial aid package. And so you want to make sure that you're working directly with the school regarding how that number is being used and what your award can be.
Awesome. Thank you, Ariel. And then a question for you, Nina. should students or families or anybody contact each individual school to make sure they received their FAFSA?
That's a good question. I would say that in general, I would tend to check with the schools that your student is most vested in. If you haven't heard back, if you don't hear with the admission decision what the financial aid decision is, but also being in financial aid, my advice to friends and family has always been that you check with each school to make sure that your file is complete, because different schools have different requirements. Some schools do 100% verification and require some transcript from the IRS. Some schools have the CSS profile. Some schools have a school-specific form. So in general, it makes sense to just be very, very organized when you're going through this process. If financial aid is a top concern, which for most people it is, and note what schools need what, when, and that they have received it.
Awesome. And then I will just add, a lot of schools will have an applicant portal that will actually tell you what things are missing. So that's also a thing that you and your students should be aware of, because you might be able to see if they've already received your financial aid documents there. So we are about 5 minutes away from the end of the hour. So I just want to ask a couple of last minute questions. So one of the last questions that I'm going to ask is about the net price calculator, my intuition, some of these things. So it seems like a lot of people are just worried that they won't be able to afford college. So a little bit outside of the FAFSA there. So what is your advice on filling out net price calculators, using my intuition if the school has it? Do any of you all use my intuition at your institutions? It looks like
it's available on our website, but we do recommend that students use our net price calculator, because that will give them their best estimate in relationship to the full cost of attendance at WashU. So we want it to be very specific to our cost of attendance, and most schools should be the same. Using the net price calculator should give you your best estimate for that institution based off of the full cost that it would be at that school, and how your what your contribution would look like there, because that may look different depending on the school and how much that school costs. So we do offer the My Intuition, but the net price calculator would be my go-to.
Awesome. Thank you. And then I guess the last question that I will ask is just for each of you to touch a little bit on, I guess, as we see, there have been over 150 questions asked, which we've been able to get to many of them, which is spectacular. But just, I guess, 1 or 2 sentences of advice as students and families are sitting around and thinking about filling out the FAFSA and embarking on this financial aid in college journey. And I will actually start in the order that we introduce ourselves. So you're up, Dari.
Yeah, totally. So my best advice, if at all possible, while filling out the FAFSA or the CSS profile, it'll be best recommended that you sit down and do it as a family or as a student and parent, because oftentimes the student is going to need so much parental information that doing it over the phone may not be the most easiest for the student. So hashing it out together is totally acceptable. And then if you need any kind of help, reach out to the helpline or the schools you're applying to, because there are resources out there to make sure that you understand what you're doing and you're not alone and you're in the dark.
Awesome. And then Susan.
My recommendation is, this is your money. These are your children. These are 2 very important aspects of your life. And we all want you to be informed consumers. So when I end a financial aid night, I remind all the families that I'm speaking with to be good consumers, to not be afraid to ask questions, to contact the schools where your children are intending to enroll and ask any question that you want to ask, because it is so important that you find the right fit for your child, not only academically and socially, but financially for your family. So ask questions and don't be afraid to reach out, because that's what we're here to do, is to help you get the right answers.
Thank you, Susan and Nina, and then Ariel and Jenny.
My best advice is to make sure that your plan is as long as your child's education. The last thing I ever want to hear in a financial aid advisory session is that, well, we think we have this year covered, because next year is going to be tougher. And if you have multiple children, you don't want to be approaching this from a 1 year at a time perspective. Look at this as a marathon, and make sure that you're making choices that are sustainable for you and your family, both the student and possibly any other siblings that might be coming up underneath.
My best recommendation, I love the answers that have already been given as well. Another recommendation that I would make is just to allow yourself to open up possibility, to prioritize value and fit of the university where you want to attend over cost alone. Don't let the sticker price scare you out of applying to a school. A lot of schools have the ability to work through the financial aspect. A lot of schools meet 100% of demonstrated need for a student. And so don't write any school off. Don't write your dream school off just based off of the price. Make sure that you're talking with someone, as the other panelists have said. Make sure you're reaching out to the financial aid office in order to review all options that are available, exhaust all those options, ask all those questions before writing a school off just off of sticker price. Value and fit is very important for your 4 years of college as well.
I completely agree with what everybody said. I know we don't have time for me to get on my soapbox, but I will just say this really quickly. The financial aid process is overwhelming for a lot of people. I know for me, for myself, I am a first-generation college student. My family was overwhelmed too. I totally get it. One thing I just want to make sure that you are all aware of is that you can apply for outside scholarships if you are concerned about the cost of school, right? So there's lots of resources out there that you can look into. FastWeb, for example, is one of them. You can find scholarships on College Board. If you just do a quick Google search, you can find tons of scholarships that you can apply for. The only thing that I would say is they will never make you pay for it, and beware of scams. Don't give them your social security number or anything like that. And if you have questions, partner with your school counselor at your high school or community college, partner with your financial aid office, but look into outside scholarships as well, because you can use them for tuition or room and board. And then sometimes you can also use them for textbooks or laptops or anything else for your educational expenses. So again, I know it's overwhelming. Take deep breaths. We all love being in this field because we love working with families. Reach out to your financial aid offices and your admissions officers at the various schools. We want to help you. But seriously, look into scholarships. I think that might ease a lot of people's anxieties if they're seeing that there are outside ways that they can fund their institution of their dreams. So that's all I have to say. But again, if you gave me more time, I would ramble on for a half hour about it, but that's all I have to say for now.
All right, well, thank you all so much for this. I'm going to try to turn on my video for this last few seconds, just to say thank you all for taking the time out to all of the presenters from our coalition member schools, as well as to all the students, families, and friends who are on the call tonight, asking these wonderful questions. Once again, this will be recorded, and since you registered for this, you will receive this in your email. And then Amanda from Team Coalition dropped in some of the links for upcoming events, and the CSS profile event will also be next month. So thank you all once again, and have a great night. See ya.